Hey Hexers, this is Function here with another Beyond the Basics video. I'll be going over various aspects of champions and how they work. Later this week, I'll be analyzing them one by one a bit more in depth. For now though, let's talk about some of the larger implications of champions. First off, they're always in play. Once you've built your deck, once you've actually started the game, the champion is going to be available to you from turn 1, from the very first turn of the game. Each champion has a charge power, and they're considered basic actions, so you can only play it during your own turn, once per turn, when you have priority. They have a threshold cost, so in this case, Gozog's is 1 blood threshold. They have a charge cost, in this case, Gozog's is 2 charges. And the way charges work, I kind of went over in my earlier video in the resource acceleration, but in this case, every time you play a resource, you get a charge. There's also a couple other sources that you can get charges from. There's a couple artifacts. If you play that Chlorophylla card, it's going to put 2 wild resources into play, and it's going to give you 2 charges, I would assume. But you get the charges, and once you spend them, they're permanently gone for the rest of the game. So Gozog, you could use his ability on turn 2 and turn 4 if you had 4 resources in play by turn 4. His ability is deal 1 damage to target champion and gain 1 life. So I think that's pretty easy to understand from here, and how it will impact the game. It's pretty much all extra value. It doesn't actually affect the board state, like the champion isn't an extra thing in play. It's just off to the side and use your charges as you please. So one more thing before I move on to my next topic is that I just want to talk about the threshold cost here. So since Gozog has 1 blood threshold, it means that he's going to be able to be splashed in just about any deck. He can be played in any deck that's playing blood as one of its colors. Whereas if he had maybe 3 blood threshold, that means he would probably only fit in a deck that was primarily playing blood. So that's something to keep in mind. And on the same topic of what champions fit into what types of decks, there's a lot of champions that are really flexible, like Gozog, and that he can fit in an aggro or a control deck, because the aggro deck's going to gain by just getting extra damage through without actually having to expend cards from its hand. Whereas the control deck, that 1 life, very rarely, but still potentially, could make the difference of you getting 1 more turn and potentially stabilizing. So he's flexible in that case. There's going to be some champions that you have to build around, that they require maybe artifacts to be in play, or they require a specific type of troop to be in play, or maybe that they require no troops to be in play. There could be a lot of really interesting charge powers that are kind of more build around ones, where you have to cater your deck specifically for it, but maybe you're rewarded more for the way it interacts. So the next thing is something to keep in mind is that the champions are playable in sealed deck and draft as well. So when you're building your deck or when you're drafting your cards, you want to keep that in mind, that, you know, maybe you're drafting blood so far, and you're going to keep in mind that Gozog is potentially one of the champions you'll be playing. Whereas maybe there's going to be some champions you personally really don't like playing. So you're going to rule them out. There's going to be multiple champions in a specific color, but if you really don't like playing one, you might want to avoid that color. The next thing I'll say is down here at the bottom, it's kind of awkward that they put the attack stat and the defense stat on a champion card. I would imagine they're going to remove these, but it kind of opens up the potential that maybe some champions make it so you start with less or more than 20 life, and then maybe they have a lesser, more powerful effect, or any number of things. The last thing here at the bottom is that I would imagine this indicates that it's in set 1, so there's potential for a champion to rotate out. If there's a really dominant champion and a really dominant deck that goes along with it, as soon as that set rotates out, that champion won't be around anymore, and it might completely change the way that deck works. It might make new decks possible with the new champions, and it might make some old ones just completely obsolete. The last thing that isn't quite clear that I wanted to kind of address is are you going to be able to see what champion your opponent's playing at the start of the game? Watching some of the Twitch streams, it's not really readily, like, it's not very clear if you can tell what champion they're playing unless they say. So hypothetically, when you're mulliganing, if you could see what champion your opponent has for the very first game, if you see them with a champion that is only fits in aggressive decks, you're going to know right away what kind of hands you want to keep and which ones you want to mulligan. It's going to give you extra information. Now, it's possible we might not even be able to tell what champion our opponents are playing, but it's definitely something to consider. On the same note is, I don't think it's been made clear yet if it's possible to sideboard out a champion. Maybe you build your deck around a specific champion, or maybe there's 2 specific champions that could fit in it, and after the first game, maybe that second champion just works better against the deck you're playing against. It's definitely possible that you could sideboard a champion out, although I don't really expect that. So that concludes the video. If you enjoyed it, please subscribe. If you had any comments, please put them in the box below. Less fail, more function.